Hey Airflow community, Airflow 3 is here and we are taking it on the road. Join the Astronomer Roadshow for an exclusive deep dive into the latest features, hands-on demos, and expert insights, all in a city near you. We'll be in London in May, New York City in June, Sydney in July, San Francisco in July, and Chicago in August. Don't miss your chance to connect with the Airflow community and get the inside scoop on what's next. Register now. The link is in the show notes.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Data Flowcast. I'm your host, Marc Lamerty, and today I'm joined by Raviteja. Super excited to have you in this episode. Senior Data Engineer at Deloitte Digital. How you are doing?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Yeah, doing great. It's nice to have you here because we are going to go through like very interesting questions about Airflow and also like your experience that you had with Airflow. So, for today's podcast, Raviteja will share practical insights and hard-won lessons from implementing Airflow for orchestration at scale. So I'm very, very excited. And I think we can start by the very beginning, which is what was your initial motivation for adopting Airflow? Like, how did you get started with Airflow? Why did you choose Airflow?
Yeah. So the first, to answer your question, first I'll want to talk about the problem statement that we have faced before Airflow, before implementing Airflow. So basically, when we started working on a couple of microservices that we had, so where we tried creating a customer data platform. For that purpose, we have to do the identity resolution. We have to doing very rigorous cleansing jobs, standardize the data, standardize the addresses that we get, PI data, everything. We used to load a lot of data into the system, make sure that data is being processed with different layers. And once the data is processed, we have to load it to either, there is again a specific use case, either to load it in a cloud or directly to the SQL server or to a BigQuery or to Azure Synapse. So the use case is very different. The use case is cloud agnostic. So initially, when we started building the product itself, we started working on a microservices. And to integrate those microservices, initially we started working using the tools like ETL tools. It might be the Talend, it might be Matillion. So we started working on those tools initially. And for that purpose also, there are like different rules. Like whenever the file comes, you have to do some action. So basically all those things, trigger based rules, like what should happen, how the orchestration should happen, all those things we used to manually do it in a pipe in an ETL process, and then run this process in a VM or something like that. So there it was again tedious because either we have to take a Matillion VM separately, and which is very whether I can show it or not, it's costly. And we are searching for an open source tool where we can write our own orchestration for things and perform some logic. Okay. And as I mentioned, it is very data-driven solution that we are trying to build. So initially what we did was, so I thought back in 2019, I researched about the tool called Airflow. Then I started doing small POCs, very small POCs, like how to trigger a file, how to initiate a Docker command, and then run that in the Docker pod. And then how you have to how to do, if let's say if you have very huge process to do that, how to do it in the Kubernetes pod. So I have very small use cases initially. As part of POC, I was just achieving that. So once I understand how efficient it is, how useful it is, I started not promoting, basically, I started talking to my managers, like leadership, saying, why can't we implement this? As it's an open source tool, we can use it. And it's cost effective. So I did research, and whatever orchestration that we used to do in Matillion or Talend, because we serve different clients with different technologies. So I tried creating a custom solution for entire orchestration that we did in the Airflow. And with some we did the cost analysis as well. So we found that this is cost effective, easy to use because it's Python based, and you can create the dynamic DAGs. Again, when I say dynamic DAGs, again, I don't want to go into details, but you have much flexibilities here. That means you can and our end goal was to be cloud agnostic. So when I say cloud agnostic, again, it should, like, the data solution can be deployed at GCP, AWS, Azure. Our orchestration should not be dependent on that cloud. So we created the generic solution which will work on all the environments, irrespective of the cloud. So that's the main motivation that we got to go through the Airflow. And it happened back in 2019, and it's a very long time I started using it, implemented it. Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned two interesting things. So you actually said that with Airflow you can generate dynamic DAGs.
Yeah.
I mean, you can dynamically generate DAGs.
DAGs.
Because it's not something that you can do with Talend.
Yeah.
Okay. I have honestly, I have no idea because I've never touched Talend, so that's why.
Yeah, it's an ETL tool again. So it will be like a step-by-step procedure. Okay, you have some XYZ thing happen, how the data should be cleansed using some component. Then what let's say if you want to use a Docker pod and initiate something, then you have to like basically drag and drop tool and everything.
Okay.
Example, even I'll give you a very small example. Even to change the schema, you have to go to the Talend job, make the changes, again redeploy, which is hectic work. So we want to build a solution which is not dependent on the schema. So we want everything to be configured, and with Airflow variables and also the environment that we have, the entire pod setup, we made use of all the configurations that are provided by Airflow as much as possible. That we build an entire platform on top of that currently. Yeah, it's going good.
Okay, so would you say, is it correct to say that you found more flexibility with Airflow than with Talend? Like you were able to do pretty much whatever you wanted with Airflow?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because like, I guess like those tools like Talend and others, I don't have
Medallion.
Yeah, exactly. And even like others, like they seem to be like nice because they seem to be easy to use maybe at the beginning, right? Like it's a drag and drop
Drag and drop, yes.
But then at some point when you want to do like more advanced things, you realize that because you have like this layer on top of all the technical things, then you cannot really go as far as you want. Like you don't have as much flexibility as you need. And actually, like I think many data engineers like Airflow because of that, because like all of the flexibility.
One more point is basically like a couple of tools. Let's say Talend might support Snowflake, might not support Snowflake. I'm not directly saying Talend won't support, but the components, right? It comes with enhancements. At some point of time, you need Snowflake components. It might not be available. At some point of time, you might need BigQuery component. It might not be available. So it will not even. The best thing that we can find with Airflow is like you can write your own components. You can write your own, define your own task. It's just a Python script. At the end of the day, write what you want, it will be achieved.
Yeah,
that's a very good flexibility because you will not be dependent on a tool saying, I want to do this thing, whether the component is available or not.
Yeah.
With respect to Airflow, it's a Python code, write it, what you want.
Yeah. Actually, that's also why I adopted Airflow a long time ago. And also you said something interesting because maybe some people will disagree with that. You said that Airflow was easy to use, like was easy
once
to
you
get
understand
started.
it. Once you understand it. So there is like a hard hill if you want to climb it. If you will to climb it, once you climb up the hill, then no one would be a stopper. It will be straightforward. Once you understand how it works, it is easy. But for a new beginner, you have to hold. Like example, if you see any if you want to watch any series or something like that, there will be a threshold. Till that point of time, it will be boring, or it will be difficult to go through the series. And then once you reach it, it will be easy for you to navigate.
Any particular like any specific concepts maybe that you felt at that time was a bit
not
hard?
Good.
Yeah, I wouldn't say not good, but hard to understand maybe at first as a beginner.
Yeah. So as a beginner, like back in 2019, orchestration is good, but in the backend, what is happening? It's complex. Like I would say, bit complex. Example, how the scheduler is making the worker pod spin up. Because at that point of time, I had like 3 years of experience. For me, it's too much to consume, like too much of information to consume. So it took time for me to understand how the scheduler is working, how the workers are working, how you are using the metadata in the background and then passing the information to one component to the other component. So all that information, it will come with experience. as a in the beginning, you might not feel comfortable with it, but once you get enough information about it, you'll feel good about it.
Yeah, true. I guess like one and also like I mean you mentioned that it was in 2019.
Yep.
So like I mean I think it's important for listeners that in 2019 you didn't have that much information about Airflow.
Yeah.
It was pretty much the beginning, honestly.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess like did you evaluate any other orchestrators or did you go with Airflow right away?
Evaluate, no.
Okay.
At that point of time, I was searching for an open source store specifically. I
Okay.
heard there was one more orchestration called Kubeflow. I don't know why. Like I want to do a data engineering aspect, not a data science aspect where you want to learn machine learning, everything. So very basic research I did, and I came to know that this is more comfortable, not comfortable for my use case. This is what I want to use, not the.
Mhm.
I did
Okay.
that research, but I went through it.
Got it. I mean, I think you made the right choice. All right. So I will say, so maybe like, with all the experience that you have obviously with Airflow, I imagine that you've built a couple of DAGs since 2019. Is there like any DAGs maybe that you remember where where you had like some really interesting challenges that you had to solve? Maybe
Yep.
like, can you tell
Right.
me more about that?
So again, I like for a newcomer to Airflow, it might not be useful, but people who are working Airflow, they might relate.
Yeah.
So at some
Mhm.
point of time, whenever you are choosing the executor, you have a limitation. Either you have to go to Kubernetes executor or Celery executor. In a specific use case, you can use Kubernetes Celery executor. So it's one of the update that we got. So example, when I'm writing a couple of steps in my DAG saying I have 10 tasks, and I want to choose which executor I want to use. If I have a very bulky job where I want to run in a separate pod, in that instance, I can go for Kubernetes executor. If all my task has a specific use case to use Kubernetes pod, I'll choose Kubernetes executor. If those are very minimal tasks, like very basic things, read a file, do some operation, cleanse it, and then send it back. For that, I can go for Celery executor. For us, it was both. And the transition between the Kubernetes executor and Celery executor is a bit tricky. It's always not efficient. I feel it's not efficient because we used to face a lot of problems. For example, the information that was passed from Kubernetes executor, the pod or the task, from the next executor, there is some delay. Or else something in the background in the DB, something gets wrong, and that information is not passed to the next executor and it is delayed. If pod is stuck, the next information is not getting passed to the Celery executor, and there is a delay. So this transition we faced a number of times. So at that point of time, we didn't have an answer. I recently came to know that you can choose a specific executor for a specific task, which was good. But earlier we faced issues with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I think like, I think whenever, I mean, honestly, like, I think whenever you have to deal with Kubernetes, it's always going to be complex.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's actually interesting what you said about executors and choosing the right one. There is there is this new feature in, I think it came with 2.10 or 2.9 maybe, with the hybrid executors.
Yeah.
So maybe people don't know about that new feature, but basically now you can really at the task level define which executor you
want. Yeah.
Exactly. So for example, you can just decide to go with the Celery executor or the Kubernetes executor. Obviously, that implies that you have the infrastructure behind the scene, right? I mean, you cannot use the Kubernetes executor if you're not running it on Kubernetes. But this is a really cool feature. So for those who are listening right now and want to, like actually don't want to choose one or the others, then you can go with the hybrid executors. Like I think in the configuration file, you have to specify which executors you want to use, and then at the task level, you can just specify the executor. So this is really cool. Great. I guess like how do you approach like testing and monitoring with Airflow? Because this is actually I mean, for me, like testing and monitoring is almost like cybersecurity, where we all agree to need that, but it's not the most it's not the sexiest thing, right?
Yes.
So can you tell us more about like maybe how do you let's start with how do you monitor your pipelines? And it can
Yeah.
be as simple as just like looking at the UI, right? But
Right.
if you have anything else, and also like how do you test your DAGs if you do it? Because again, this is actually pretty complex as workflows
Yeah.
and interact with many things.
When you say complex, I'll tell you the reason why.
Okay.
So basically, you need to understand the mocking mechanism.
Yeah.
Again, it's a
True.
new thing to, like, example for a new beginner, it was a new thing to try implementing it. And when you are dealing with multiple tasks, let's say connected to different components, DB, Kubernetes pod, and everything, to mock those many components would be tricky.
Can you define mock for those who don't know?
So basically, mocking is like, example, I want to connect to a database and then I want to get some results out of it. So ideally, when you are doing a testing, you should not be doing it. You need
Mm.
to mock it, mock as in similar instance, like create a function similar to that of what you are doing with the connect DB connection, small
Mhm.
function, just get the result back. Basically, you are directly returning the data that you are expected to return as you are
Yeah.
doing only the unit test, and then just go to the next module. Don't expect
Mhm.
to connect to a DB and come back, because it will delay the
Mhm.
perform. It will delay what you are trying to test. And when you are trying to test the actual connection, it's not needed. If you are just
Mhm.
trying to functionality, just do that, not test the entire connection and everything in the backend.
Okay.
So when we are doing it, as you said, it was complex, and I'll be very frank, we haven't implemented 80, not even 80% of the test cases for Airflow. I want to be very frank. I don't want to be exaggerating
Yeah.
things. It's like, it's if it's working, it's good. If it fails, we'll fix it. And data engineers, right? So you cannot expect everything to work at any point of time.
Yeah.
You'll get issues. You need to fix things, because when you are dealing with the data, you have to understand you cannot cover all the scenarios. So
Yeah.
go with the flow, where identify issue, try to cover most of the scenarios. There will always be edge cases. When you come up with the edge case, try to fix them. Don't revolve around, don't try to solve all the problems at once. When you face it, solve it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I mean, I think it's important to be honest. And you are definitely not the. I mean, I think like many data engineers are in the same case as you. I mean, obviously, it's pretty easy to test Python code, but as soon as you're gonna have like, you know, Bash scripts to run,
Right.
SQL requests to run, all of that stuff, like interacting with Snowflake and so on. I mean, a workflow can be pretty hard, pretty complex
Yes.
again. Um, so if you have like if you run like Python functions and if you rely on the Python operator a lot, then it might be easier. You can run unit tests like you will do
Yeah.
with the Python code. But as soon as you're gonna have to make connections and so on, to your point, you will need to mock that. And if you
Right.
want to know if your tasks work together, you will even have to run your DAG at some point.
Right. Right.
So it's definitely tricky. But thank you for like, I mean, it is what it is. We do what we can do.
Yes.
Um, I guess on the monitoring part, like, do you have anything in place in addition to the Airflow UI? Like, do you rely on any other systems like Grafana or things like that, or not?
Yeah. So for standard output, basically we use Loki as part of
Okay.
monitoring. We use Prometheus for monitoring. As I speak, right, we are dealing about using the Kubernetes pods. So we need to monitor that pod, the
Yeah.
memory pod CPU. So we have even implemented Prometheus in the backend. And also we use Grafana dashboard to check everything, like what are the logs that need to be checked, what are the resources that were utilized by Airflow. So all those things, we have that in the backend deployments. And one more thing is basically for monitoring the data flow, what we used to do is we have a system integrated within the DAGs or task, where wherever we process something, we used to put all the stats of the file, load it as Postgres DB within the Airflow. We have created one more instance of the DB. And then we used to load all the manifest data into the table, so that
Mhm.
every run, whatever you are doing, how much data you are processing, what are the jobs that you are performing, how much data you are loading, all those stats, we are making sure we are just placing it one place, and then we are showing that information on the Grafana dashboard.
Okay, I guess like running Airflow at scale, I mean, you already mentioned that a little bit because most of the time the issues that you're gonna get are on the infrastructure side. But
Yes.
running Airflow at scale, maybe like, did you like, what has been your experience so far with that? Like, would you say? I mean, I don't want to say like, would you say it's easy, because it's not. But
not.
like, maybe like what like, can you tell us more about what kind of issues did you get? Did you did you have when you started to run Airflow at scale? Maybe like what kind of challenges, I would say, not issues,
Yeah.
but challenges.
Uh, Identifying the correct configurations of your scheduler and worker pods. Again, this might be technical again. Whether to have one scheduler or two schedulers, again, it matters. So when you want to scale up the data processing, let's say you are using 10 DAGs, 20 DAGs, it's good. Basic resources that you are supposed to give it to the scheduler and it will handle it. But let's say you have 100 DAGs. Situations change, things change. Then you have to think about having the replication sets on scheduler, replication sets on the worker pod, how the information is passed from one scheduler to other scheduler. And if you are using it in a, let's say you have cloud native, like a cloud composer, the things will change because everything is handled by GCP. If you are using a specific tool with respect to AWS, things will change. But if you want to create your own instance of Airflow and then run all the processes in Kubernetes, I would say it's hard. It's hard to manage it because see, it's like you are taking the Airflow, which is an open source tool, and you are building a solution out of that. So you have to manage what amount of resources that it needs. Tricky.
Yes.
It's tricky.
Yeah, actually, you made a very good point. I think people need to realize, like, there is a big difference between like Airflow as an orchestrator, and having to set up the infrastructure to run Airflow. Because running Airflow on an EC2 instance with just the basics, it's okay.
Yeah.
But running Airflow at scale, by your own is definitely something else. So when you see like some competitors saying that, hey, look how it is easy to run our own solution at scale, blah blah blah. Most of the time, what they don't tell you is, yes, on the cloud, obviously it works because you don't have to manage the infrastructure, right? Like you don't have to manage the infrastructure. But as soon as you have to manage the infrastructure, regardless of the tool you're going to use, you will see the same challenges that you will have for any other tools because you are trying to run that tool at scale. And when you have like, obviously, like when you want to run things at scale, you have like some scalability challenges.
There is always a thin layer. Yes, it will work. Yes, you are managing it good, but at what cost?
Yeah, exactly.
Cost you have to consider. Example, if you are giving how much resources, you do the testing that you want, decide the resources, and it will utilize those resources, and the amount of cost that it generate, it is like billing is, you have the control over it. If let's say XYZ solution is there and they are saying we can do wow factors, you should also consider about its cost. At what cost you are getting that solution, and at what cost you are making sure that you are running your own DAG. So cost factor is always an important thing where people will forget about talking this terminology, but even cost should be considered when you are serving the clients. You should not cost them much. So less cost, more efficient, or more cost, okay, or more efficient. It's always like a thin gap between what you want to choose.
Yeah, there is a trade-off for sure. I agree with you. So now, like, looking at Airflow evolution over the years, because Airflow hopefully has evolved a lot since 2019. Like, do you have any features or improvements in mind that for you has had the biggest impact on your work, right? Like, is there anything that like when you got that feature, you were like, oh, damn, finally it's here.
With this latest release, I haven't used that yet because we are using the old version where we have already integrated everything and everything is running smooth. So we don't want to directly migrate to newer version. But the feature that I have saw, like I have saw in the latest book, I heard that whatever we have discussed earlier, right, where you can choose what executor you want. That was a wow factor for me because I struggled a lot with that. So I can relate much to that. So that's a what factor. One good thing I can tell you is that dark mode, waiting for that. I don't know whether it is right or not. But yeah, dark mode, because I used to stare at the screen and number of times. I don't want it to be strained because of that. So yeah, dark mode, will love that. Yeah, those are the two things I like about it. And also the UI. When I say UI, the resources utilization and the doc, like there is one more page, right? Apart from the DAGs, there is one more page where you can see the consumption, resource consumption and everything. That is also cute. That is also good, rather than navigating it to some other to how much resources that Kubernetes pod is doing. It's good to have it there.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Like the dark mode and the hybrid executors are definitely cool features. Actually, I don't know about you for that one, but I remember that when dynamic task mapping, got released, I was so excited because finally you were able to truly like dynamically generate tasks based on an input that you don't know in advance, right? Like if you get like 5 files on Monday, then you generate 5 tasks. If you get 6 on Tuesday, you can generate 6 tasks. So this, like for me, that was really a really nice feature that we got in Airflow. I don't remember.
I started already doing a POC on that recently, because we have that specific use case where we want to run different things for different set of files, like based on the schema and everything. So rather than defining, saying, okay, do this job, then like rather than doing it sequentially, we want to do it dynamically. Like once the file is there, decide, see the schema and dynamically create its corresponding tables or something like that. I'm still doing the POC, but yeah, it's a good feature to have.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Raviteja, so it was awesome to have you for this episode. We are almost at the end, but before leaving, thank you so much for joining. And what is the best way for folks to get in touch with you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is the best way. It's Raviteja0096, my username. So feel free to talk, ask me questions on LinkedIn. I even, like, a lot of people tried to reach out. So I was like selected as a Airflow champion, where the astronomer like did that, right? So I was selected as an Airflow champion. I did like have written multiple blogs about it, using Airflow, simplifying the architecture, my Airflow journey. So all those things, and I used to reach out to multiple, like people used to reach out to me for a specific use case. One of a manager from a specific company, I don't want to name the company, reached out to me saying my team is facing issues with this Airflow and this is how it is configured. Could you please jump on a call and try to help us? Actually, I was not working for the organization, but I did. And I kind of debugged, like sat with them for 1 hour and something like that, tried to help them. It was good. Like people started reaching out, and you can also reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Here we go. Well, again, thank you so much, Raviteja. It was a pleasure to have you on this episode. I'm sure that listeners will enjoy it. And thank you so much. Take care and
thank you so much. Yeah, have a great day. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye-bye.